is not one I'm looking forward to, because it's not one I wish we were covering, because it's awful. So with that said, November 4th, last Tuesday, around 5:13 p.m., UPS Flight 2976 was flying from SDF to Honolulu, fully loaded, max gross takeoff weight or close to it. And for reasons that are still not clear, it had the number one engine had a problem, maybe a fire, maybe an uncontained fire, separated at the pylon from the left wing. And there may or may not have been a compressor stall on the number two engine, which then put them in a unrecoverable situation. They crashed off the end of the runway. It has killed the crew members on board, which there were 3 at the time. There was a first officer, relief pilot. Sorry that's blurry. But there was a first officer, captain, and relief captain because of the length of the flight on this MD-11. And 14 people total on the ground. And then obviously there may be still some missing. And I mean, it's just rocked the entire community. It's rocked the UPS flying side, probably the ground side there too, their family, the United States, our transportation industry, because this wasn't a mishap that you just hear about on the news and move about your day. There are hundreds of angles of this to watch the deaths of these 3 aviators in real time. So we're not going to really show it because there's really nothing beyond that. We have one picture that I think we'll use as our thing because, and this is my soapbox, Wombat. I know you'll probably have a lot to say as our resident expert on airline stuff, and Gonky too. But my piece on this at this point is I use this picture because this is the last moment before it was completely unrecoverable. And what you see here is 3 aviators doing everything they can to save that airplane. It is the left engine, the number one engine, is gone. It's not apparent. In fact, it's on the runway at this point. There is video of the number 2 engine, which is the tail engine with a compressor stall, which put them in a situation that no one trains for and no one talks about, which is a max gross takeoff weight, dual engine failure after V1, which is decision speed for those that don't know. That's the speed. V1 being the speed where you had to have already decided you were going to reject the takeoff. If not, you're going. And so what I wanted to point out, despite the horrible outcome, these 3 aviators were doing everything they could. There was a bell going off, which is probably a fire warning or some other warning for the number 2 engine, because the number 1 was gone for 30-something seconds into the flight to the time that they crashed, according to the CVR. In some of these frames, you can see they're at a full boot of right rudder. This does not have any kind of yaw or load compensation like a 7.8 or a 777, so they're hand flying this. And I wanted to show that if you took out every power line, every building and stuff, this is textbook. Like, they are flying this as perfectly as they absolutely can. The aircraft attitude, and it's not wing low, it's not yawing. They did everything they possibly could. And unfortunately, it's the one of those times where it's not enough. And I think that is why it has affected all of us, because when we train, the outcomes we are given are, if you do the right thing, it'll work out. And in this case, it did not. And it's a very sad ending. FedEx and UPS have now grounded their fleet of MD-11s, and we don't know what the outcome of that will be. And that is what I have to intro on this topic. My heart goes out to everybody, the family, the airline. I know that a lot of airlines have stepped up to reach out to those at UPS, and I do as well. You know, I'm sure there's probably a couple UPS pilots who watch this show, and I cannot express how sorry I am for what we watched and for the loss of this crew, because they did what they had to do, and this wasn't the time. It just didn't work out. Gonky, I yield to you, sir.
Yeah, like you said, man, thoughts and prayers for Louisville and UPS. Terrible. Every time that we do our pilgrimage to Ohio, we take 65, go through Louisville, and I mean, dude, it takes you right past the airport. And my kids, really my son. You know, he's always straining to see all the airplanes sitting over there because it's quite the view, man. And so like when I got the first, you know, report that UPS had a plane crash, I was like, man, that's very congested area. And you know, it's just so sad that not only do we lose 3 great aviators, man, but there's you know, there's casualties on the ground. Um, you know, property destroyed and people killed. So, I mean, you touched on a lot of things, man. And you know, this picture, like you said, kind of says it all to me, because when the news was first coming out, I'm like, you know, it's got 3 engines. You know, we train for losing an engine and continuing. And I know this MD-11 has to be certified to climb out with 2 engines. And just as like more of the news came out, it's like the story gets sadder and sadder in the sense that the deck was just stacked against these guys. You know, it's unfortunate, but it has happened in aviation history where crews have done everything right and it still doesn't work out. You know, this as a pilot, and you guys probably agree, you know, I try to put myself sometimes like in their shoes. You know, what would I have done? And there's really nothing that I could have done. Like if it was me in there, there's nothing I could have done, because a lot of times, you know, when we train for an engine failure, I don't actually train for the entire engine and pylon to remove itself from the airplane, which would cause associated other failures and whatnot. And I don't know the MD-11, you know, but you know, more modern airplanes kind of rack and stack emergencies that you're having. But I mean, just the sheer confusion of like, we lost an engine. Why isn't this thing climbing? Like, what is going on? And they didn't have a lot of time, you know, to process what was going on. And that bothers me the most as a pilot, because I like to think that I have the SA at all times. I like to think that I've got whatever's happening relatively suitcased. And, you know, I'm sure there was so many things going on in that cockpit that it was probably overwhelming. But through it all, like you said, Mover, those guys kept they kept the airplane level. It didn't VMC roll into the ground. The only reason why it rolled is it hit something.
Yep.
So my hat's off to them for you know, I would argue they probably saved lives, dude, because if they mishandled it right away and the thing rolled over right away, I mean, all you got to look at the pictures, man. There's all kinds of stuff like right past the departure into the runway. So they did what they could to make it as controlled of a crash as possible. But dude, when you're loaded with fuel to go all the way to Honolulu, I think it's like 500,000 pound max takeoff weight. I mean, I think one engine's probably making 40,000 pounds of thrust. I mean, like I said, everything is against you. So hopefully, you know, the investigation will reveal what's wrong. Like you said, they've grounded all the MD-11s. Similar crash back in 1979 with a DC-10 that ended up being a maintenance issue. And you know, even if this is a maintenance issue, like you're not going to convince me that anybody did anything on purpose, right? So but you know, whatever the issue is, I hope they find it, and they find it quickly, and it can be resolved. But yeah, again, thoughts and prayers to everybody at UPS. I got a lot of friends there, and the city of Louisville.
Yeah, real quick before that's a good point, Gonky. The maintainer in that DC-10 crash took his own life because they blamed him. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that maintenance is so important to a flying operation, and the maintainers are the salt of the earth, people doing everything they can to do the right thing. You know, I saw a horrible comment, you know, people are like, you know, throw maintenance in jail. Just stop, please. Yeah. Like they feel no one feels worse, honestly, than watching their own airplane that they just launched out. So please have some compassion for the people that turn wrenches, because they are important. And you know, that they're hurt just like everybody else, and we feel for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, dude, if you know, think about it, if you're a mechanic working there in Louisville, and you just saw that airplane taxi out and crash like that, and you worked on it, I mean, 100%, you're going to be wrecking your brain thinking like,
What could I have done?
What did I just do? And it might not even be your fault, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, no. So
Sorry, Wombat.
yeah, Wombat, go ahead, man.
No, I mean, you guys really, you said it all. I just have 2 points. One, and I'm sure we'll talk about it unrelated to this, but I know right now air travel is not ideal. And I know this was a cargo plane, but I know that there's a lot of people focusing on how there's delays and how there's, everything seems like it's just not doing well in the air between ATC and everything. And I would caution people to know that, these 3 pilots left home that day to fly their trip like they did how many other times. If they had families at home, they probably hugged their families, or maybe it was too early, or maybe their kids were at school. Their spouses, they left just like they had done hundreds of times before, pet their dog, or maybe gave their dog an extra cookie on the way out the door, or whatever their habit pattern is, not knowing this was the fate that they were going to have that day. And so when you're traveling and you're walking around the airport, realize everybody that works in our profession is leaving something. I have this discussion with my son where, when I leave on a trip, he loses me, right? Because I leave the equation, but I leave everything, right? I leave the whole family. I leave everything. As he says, he goes, "You leave your truck." I go, "Yeah, I leave everything," right? That's what aviators do. And they do it for their whole career. And so have some compassion there. I think the maintenance point is a huge point. Nobody feels good regardless of what's going on here. I will tell you, 25 years now of flying, the maintenance personnel are why I'm still here. And, countless stories that you guys know, that I've said on the show, I've said on other shows, I've written about, where planes are falling apart around me. And it was the maintenance guys that kept those planes strong enough for me to be able to put it back on the ground. And without them, we're nothing, period. So anybody who tries to throw them under the bus, yeah, I have no sympathy for you. I'm not supposed to judge, but I'll judge for a second and say you're a horrible individual because you don't understand the pressures they're under. Additionally, any one of us, and I say us as people that come on podcasts, not that I have a podcast, but that uses something like this to gain from it under the ruse that they have aviation experience. I think the only way I could describe that is there's a special place in hell for you for that, because people's lives have been lost. People's lives have been changed. Just because somebody flies an airplane does not make them an expert on everything aviation. There are plenty of things in this world that I don't know a damn thing about aviation. And you're not going to hear me talk about it. You're also not going to hear me or the 2 people above me make up lies regarding things that happened in their life just because they need a little bit of a click because there's nothing going on. The last comment that I need to make, and I don't know if any of the family members will ever hear this, but I feel bad for the wives, the spouses, the children. I'm sure there was a lot of, I don't know how many family members were involved just from these 3 pilots. I don't know those numbers, but I'm sure it's a good amount. I'm here to tell you, as somebody that does know a thing or two about aviation, you're going to live the rest of your lives seeing recounts of the darkest day that you could imagine, whether you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram and there's clickbait or whatever. It's going to come up. It's going to hurt again in the future. I can tell you, as somebody that's 25 years in aviation, your family member did it right. They did it right. I could tell from the one picture Mover put up, they were doing everything they possibly could do. It wasn't in their hands at that point. So, not that that's going to be a consolation, not that that's going to make you necessarily feel better anytime soon, but I would want to know that if I was gone from this world and my son or daughter had to watch something like this in the future, at least if they knew I did it right and did the best that I could do with what I was given. And I'm here to tell you, and I will take a little bit of expertise on this, not because I know MD-11s, not because I've flown that plane, but because I've been in a lot of hairy situations and I've taught a lot of really hard things in simulators. From that one picture alone, your family member was doing it right. And you can hang your hat on that for what it's worth going forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Wombat. You know, people are probably going to look at this and go, well, where's the expert analysis? And that is for the NTSB to determine. We've talked about kind of what's available now, which is more than likely it was a dual engine, some kind of failure where number one potentially caused the number two engine to fail, whether it's through debris. I've talked to MD-11 pilot, and they were talking about that was not an uncommon occurrence where, FOD from either motor could cause the number two, the centerline engine. It's not something I'm used to because I've never flown anything with centerline. Gonky, you talked about engine failure, severe damage. We actually do train for that. That is, at least on the 787, we train for the engine coming off the airplane altogether. It is a different training thing, but it's definitely something we train to. However, in this case, the numbers are based off of at least two engines. The numbers are based off of that. And I think from this point forward, it only gets harder and harder to watch. When we, in a year or two, when we're talking about the final report, or if I'm doing it on my channel, I think when you start talking the timeline, which the timeline already exists with a lot of ADS-B data. I mean, they didn't get very high. You're going to see a very tragic, it's just,
you can't go and you can't stop. You
can't go and you can't stop, and you can't give up. And that's right. If nothing else, to Wombat's point, if you're a family member, which God, I wish you wouldn't. I wish you wouldn't be watching this channel. I wish you wouldn't watch this right now. But if you're a family member watching, you have to know that your loved ones did not quit. That picture, and that everything there shows you the fact that they rotated, got airborne, flew it as far as they could. That is 3 crew members that did not quit. And I say 3 because I guarantee you the jump seater, an experienced MD-11 pilot, was doing exactly what a crew would do and trying to assist with quick reaction checklists and immediate action procedures and whatever that their airline has. That jump seater is part of the crew. And that, because they're not a jump seater, they're a crew. That's a relief pilot. Let me make that distinction, because another channel went out and said they had 4 jump seaters, which totally threw a wrench in it to the media and the public, which is the part I have a problem with. When you're going to go and spread misinformation just to be first, that's unprofessional. So, but that person occupying the jump seat as a crew member was part of this, and they were all, as far as I know, right, just looking at the picture, I'm making an assumption, but they were doing everything they could. And the outcome is tragic and horrific, but it also could have been worse. If you had been on a different runway, if they'd been going the other direction, there's a university the other direction.
Yeah.
There are so many more things that could have been way worse. But at the end of the day, I always say, there by the grace of God go I. I am not immune. Gonky, you're not immune. Wombat, you're not immune. We always, when we look at stuff like this, we hope that if it were to happen to us, that we could be judged in the same light, of what did we see at the time and what were we working with. So anyway, Gonky, you got anything else on this, or Wombat? I'm sorry.
No, man. Like you said, let the mean, there's so much video and stuff out now. I mean, like you said, a lot of assumptions could be made, but like all the detail stuff's going to have to be hashed out by the pros, man.
Yeah.
Let them do their jobs,
Yeah.
and be respectful of the families and the maintainers and everybody at UPS and just you don't know how people are affected by this.
Well,
you know? I mean, you never know.
I mean, have they even found everybody yet? Right. I mean, there's
I don't
right.
know. It's pretty bad on the ground.
Damage is tremendous.
The community is going to be affected.
Right.
I mean, just imagine, you know, every time you look up now, you're thinking, is this it? But I would say if you're wanting to know what you're going to do, if you're an airline pilot, talk to your union, reach out to the Teamsters, reach out to UPS, and see what help they need. Because that is a small pilot group, relatively speaking, compared to like Delta, American, United, and they're hurting.